In yesterday's new decks roundup, we covered all the spicy decks that posted individual results in Pokemon Pocket so far this season. I'll link that in the video description down below in case you missed it. In today's best decks meta report, we're going to be talking about the best performers that are putting up not only strong results, but also large metagame shares in our first week of community tournaments. We're going to dig on into their matchup table to see if we can make some predictions as to where the metagame is headed moving forward. Let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? Let's start with talking about the obvious new kid powerhouse on the block, Suicune EX being added into Greninja Guiritina EX as a core. Suicune serves two purposes here. The first is that the extra cards from the legendary Pulse Pokemon ability means that you assemble your Greninja with its rare candy more consistently, letting you get to start dish out Water Shuriken damage ASAP. The second is that Suicune gives you a relatively heavy hitter early and often in addition to Giratina, so you're not all in on having to generate 3 psychic energy for chaos impact before you can start doling out some big hits. Looking into the matchup tables of this deck list, it's easy to see that it's likely going to have some staying power and warp the format around it a little bit. From previous metagame decks, it looks to absolutely be wiping the floor with Espeon Sylveon, Buzzwole Ultra Beast, as well as Silvally Pichu or Corio. From a pure theory perspective, I think this makes a lot of sense. Those are all deck lists that fill the bench up pretty regularly as part of their regular game plan, meaning that Crystal Waltz is able to regularly hit for 100 or even 120 points of damage, which in tandem with Water Shuriken gives you clean knockouts into a lot of their things. One noteworthy call out in deck building with this archetype is that players seem to be split a little bit as to whether or not they're playing 2 Giratina or 1. Looking at a more granular level of the matchup detail, the biggest advantage of the second Giratina looks to be that it makes the Espeon Sylveon matchup even better. So whether or not you want to play 2 of this psychic monster or 1 will probably depend on where exactly Espeon Sylveon lands in the metagame. If it's more popular, playing 2 Tina looks to make more sense, but if that deck gets pushed out by shifts we're going to be talking about in today's video, perhaps 1 Tina will become optimal. While it's not playing any cards from our latest expansion, this 17 trainer Guzzlord Celestilla deck is popped up on the map with the latest community tournament and having an over 6% play rate. The strategy of this deck list is relatively straightforward. Guzzlord has a massive HP pool, which in tandem with Pokemon Center Lady and Potion means that your opponent is regularly going to have to deal 400 plus points of damage in order to beat you. It got utility in our previous set from Will, allowing Grindcore to be a guaranteed energy discard, and then obviously Lucamine's a big part of the glue that holds this whole thing together, meaning when they get through your first Guzzlord, she can grab 2 energy from it and immediately charge up the second, letting you continue to hit for 120 damage every single turn with no problem. Obviously, the Rocky helmets here are instrumental as well, as your opponent's wailing on your chunky monsters are going to be taking recoil damage from that. Celestilla gives you a little bit of maneuverability, but it also gives you this really clean answer to opposing copies of Oricorio, since the Moon Baton can clear that out in 1, even if it's wearing a cape with a successful coin flip. Looking at the matchup table for this deck list, it's easy to see why it's picking up in popularity in our most recent tournament. It is again wiping the floor with Espeon Sylveon and the Buzzwole deck. It's going relatively positive or close to even, perhaps, against the Suicune Guiritina deck, which is the #1 deck in the format at the moment, it would seem, and it is a little bit of a dog against Darkrai Guiritina. Overall, this makes it seem like the type of deck most tournament grinders would love to reach for. You're favored into some common matchups while only being a little bit down against anything you expect to play against with some consistency. If you're someone who likes to stay one step ahead of the metagame, trying to hit that moving target as people evolve and adapt, this Oricorio Arceus EX deck might be just the tool for doing that. It has a relatively proactive game plan here with Elemental Switch, letting you grab that energy off of Zeraora onto Oricorio or Arceus to let them start attacking sooner, and Pichu can do the same if you're going first. These 1-point electric Pokemon that attack for 50 line up exceptionally exceptionally well into Suicune, because with that weakness to lightning, you'll hit them for 70 twice before they can attack you, allowing you to clean them out very swiftly. Arceus gives you a hand in the bigger matchups against things like Guzzlord, with a matchup table of this deck looking favorable against both the two decks we highlighted just before this. That being said, this deck list definitely is not poised to run over the format as a whole, because it does look to be exceptionally bad into Darkrai Guiritina, which I think makes sense from a theory perspective. Your Arceus goes down to an Impact plus a Darkrai Chip Shot, and even Oricorio is not too troubling in that matchup between the Darkrai triggers and the consistent Rocky Helmets and Poison Barbs that they regular play for dealing with the yellow chicken. One sticking point for this particular deck past a tough Darkrai matchup is that it looks like it also struggles into Espeon Sylveon a little bit, so it's going to be interesting to see where the metagame strikes its balance. If the two decks before this can end up pushing Sylveon down and out a little bit and suppress Darkrai Guiritina, this could be a good anti-meta counter to them, but you're definitely going to have to hit your matchups right, since there are popular decks from last season that are going to give you a hard time. If you're looking to reach for a deck list in this metagame that has relatively balanced matchups, this Flareon box deck looks to be one of the best choices for that. Relatively even into the Suicune Giratina, as well as Darkrai Giratina, and even going head-to-head with things like Espeon Sylveon and the Arceus deck that we featured before this. This deck list hits hard and fast, with Magby letting you attack with your Flareons ahead of time, and then Red as well as Eevee Bag letting you jump up and hit absolutely massive breakpoints that your opponent is regularly not going to be expecting. One pain point for this particular deck list is that it looks like it lines up poorly into the Guzzlord deck, which doesn't surprise me given the fact that the discarding and energy can be a sore point for this deck that already has to do that for its attacks every single turn. Darkrai Guiritina is a pox upon Pokemon Pocket that looks to truly never be going away. While our initial data sample says it's a little bit unfavored against the Suicune decks, it's not so by a major amount. This deck list is a little bit ahead against the Guzzlord 17 trainer deck that we featured, and then it's also ahead against the Arceus or Oricorio deck, like I mentioned during that segment. So I wouldn't expect this one to really be going away anytime soon. I think the grinders that like it are going to be able to continue to play it for another season to their heart's content. For Espeon Sylveon, I wanted to throw a specific deck list up here so you get a feel for the average deck list that people have been playing. It's not that different from the previous season. The matchup tables against the other things we've talked about in this video look really rough for this archetype. Like I mentioned, it's awful against the Guzzlord 17 trainers. It's having a really hard time against the Suicune variations. This archetype's one saving grace is that it has a relatively even Darkrai Guiritina matchup, and it is ahead against the Arceus or Oricorio deck, so perhaps if that one becomes more popular, this one could come back. But as of right now, the direction the metagame is heading in is these wonderful purple and pink Eevee dogs look to be on their way out. The last deck I wanted to mention today was Buzzwole Ultra Beast Variations. This archetype has completely fallen off a cliff in terms of play rate because it has an absolutely abysmal Suicune Giratina matchup, and it's also a dog into the Arceus or Oricorio Lightning stuff. It is relatively even into Espeon Sylveon, but that deck's falling off a little bit, I would wager, and its saving grace is it is pretty good into Darkrai, but Darkrai is definitely playing second fiddle in terms of popularity to the new shiny Suicune thing right now, so I would be surprised if Buzzwole is going to have breathing room in our existing metagame unless someone's able to come up with some type of innovation to allow it to solve a terrible Suicune Giratina matchup. All in all, I have to say, Pokemon Pocket feels like it's hit a pretty good note with this last couple of expansions. It feels like they've done a good job of introducing new cards like Suicune that are competitively relevant without explicitly causing power creep to edge out things. While the baby Pokemon aren't present in a number of these top decks, they've been phenomenal tools for brewing B and C tier decks that feel like they can keep up with good play. A lot of those were covered in the new decks report yesterday, which again, if you missed it, is linked in the video video description down below. As much as some of us are sick of seeing Darkrai Guiritina day in and day out, I do think it is a genuinely good thing for Pokemon Pocket as a whole that there is a consistently competitive deck that basically contains all cards from previous expansions. This makes being competitively successful in Pocket a lot more accessible, since you can easily trade for all of these cards and you don't have to depend on Wonder Pick or Pack RNG to get to it. As always, if you enjoyed my roundup today, I'd encourage you to smash that like button. And if you enjoy data-driven meta reports like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any in the future, as we'll be covering how the metagame is developing as our expansion moves forward. As always, I appreciate everybody that made it all the way through to the end of today's video, and I hope your next pack is an excellent one.